Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dr. Megan Pickering. I'm a veterinarian and academic, and I have lived in the Katherine region of the Northern Territory for over 30 years. I'm not here to speak today as a veterinarian, but as someone who works and has worked widely across the region for a very long time. So I work with pastoralists and mango growers, and more importantly, I particularly work with Indigenous communities across the Northern Territory and in the Katherine and Beetaloo basins. And a lot of these people are not, there's none of those people here today because they don't have a voice. These people live in absolutely abject poverty. Most of them don't speak English as their first language. I noted, Mr. Fraser, that in your opening remarks you referred to APA's record on dealing ethically and with great consent with Indigenous people, and I have to say that as residents of the region, we have grave concerns about this claim because Indigenous people have not been directly consulted, not at all. My understanding is that APA is using the Northern Territory government to do all of their consulting for them. The Northern Land Council has not been consulted. The traditional owners who live and own the lands on which you plan to run your pipeline have not been consulted. Mr. Watson, I note that in your address that you said that land use access agreements had been granted. And what we're aware of as community members is that particularly in the Tannambrini land access agreement, traditional owners were put in a room without access to people who could speak their language and interpret appropriately for them. And land access agreements were written without their full consent, and with many of those people really not understanding what it was that they were signing. So this is my call out to the board today. If you really believe that you are ethically, with full consent, consulting with the people of the Northern Territory, you need to understand that the Northern Territory government is not doing this. The Northern Territory government rammed through a piece of absolutely brutal legislation earlier this year in the form of the Territory Coordinator position. We now have a single unelected bureaucrat who is able to negotiate anything he wants. If he determines that an area of the Northern Territory is an area of developmental importance, then land access agreements can be rammed through without the consent of landholders and without the consent of native title holders. We will just have to wear that. Now, the places where we live and that are really, really important to us is the parts of the land where the Cambrian limestone aquifer is absolutely the lifeblood of these communities. So many of you probably would know about the Mataranka Springs, which are beautiful postcards. It's a lovely part of the Northern Territory. But they're not just postcards. That's our water source, it's our culture, it's our tourism, and it's really our livelihoods. The Katherine region is dry. For 6 months of the year or more, we have no rain and we rely on underground water. So today I bring with me some handwritten letters from members of my community, which I would like to hand to the board at the end, and I would really like you to consider them carefully, because there is no one that is coming from major capital cities to come and actually speak meaningfully with members of our community to know what we think about what you're planning to do to our land. I really want to raise APA's role in facilitating these fracking projects because they are putting water at risk of damaging lives and culture. We have very alarming changes in water quality already, very limited baseline data, and new extraction licences keep getting issued. The most recent water allocation plan, which is going to go to irrigated agriculture as well as fracking, didn't involve traditional owners, and it left almost nothing for Indigenous communities. And these are the people that are going to be shortchanged in the long term. It's not people in this boardroom. It's not people in Sydney. It's not people who are shareholders who are making money out of this. It's very, very poor Aboriginal people who, as you said, live in the middle of nowhere. But just because they live in the middle of nowhere, it doesn't mean that they have no right to self-determination over their water and their country. And that is how we feel at the moment, that we have been completely shortchanged. If APA and its partners continue down this path and our ancient springs decline because the water extraction licences are utilised and enormous amounts of water are taken from our underground aquifers, it is our communities that are going to bear the consequences. So my first question today is, does APA's board accept any responsibility for safeguarding the Mataranka Springs from the water risks that are definitely, not possibly, definitely going to be risked by the Beetaloo gas and that your pipeline is enabling? I know that you are not the frackers. I know that you are not that company. But at the moment, we feel like we have Dracula in charge of the blood bank.
What I will say is that and again, I can't speak on behalf of the upstream parties, but the simple facts are that, as I have already alluded to, there is an enormously extensive, transparent approval process that has to be gone through, where I'll say all of the issues you've just raised about water will need to be dealt with, and be it the upstream players or ourselves, will need to comply with whatever the outcome of that assessment is and whatever conditions are imposed if an approval is ultimately given for the large-scale development. As I've already said before, there's numerous work that's been done that talks about, with appropriate safeguards, this can be done safely. I know you asked that question, but I really disagree with what you were saying about our consultation with Indigenous communities and how that's done via the Northern Land Council. I might just get Adam to speak to that, because he's been talking directly.
Sure, Michael, and thank you for your observations. So we've got various obligations and commitments that we make, both through legislation and our own commitments that we make as a company under our reconciliation plan. Probably the best evidence of the engagement that we've had, in addition to the extensive engagement that our team and our people and our contractors have with the traditional owners, including going out to site, not just the site of the operation, but to the traditional owner communities, is that as recent as, I think it was 6 weeks ago, Liz McNamara and I met with the CEO of the Northern Land Council, Yusuf Dean. So now the Northern Land Council has statutory obligations to represent the traditional owners of any area that could or is going to be affected by a development such as the one that we're working on. So they have extensive and deep engagement requirements under those statutory obligations, and I got the website here. I'm sure you've seen it. I could read through what they are, and engagement is without question the number one requirement they have. So we feel incredibly confident. Not only have we met all of the statutory obligations to provide us with the necessary permits and approvals that we have now received to progress, but also the engagement they would expect to have undertaken. We were actually commended by Yusuf for the work that we did, and I may get this a little off, but he effectively quoted us as saying it was the most extensive and professional engagement that he has ever seen, or his team, who he spoke with, has ever seen at the Northern Land Council. Now, that engagement was ongoing for months to work through the necessary processes, and the feedback was incredibly positive. So we feel incredibly proud of the work that we've done with our consultation with the communities in the Northern Territory.
Thanks, Adam. And I think it's important for other security holders here, when you hear something like that, that you don't go away from the meeting thinking that's us, when it clearly isn't us or what we've done.
I have a follow-up question, sorry. I'm glad you're confident that you've done adequate consultation, but I was at a community meeting on Sunday in Katherine with Northern Land Council members who knew absolutely nothing about what you're talking about. So some people may know, but everybody doesn't. I guess my follow-up question was, if APA will not accept any responsibility for the risks of safeguarding our water, will you commit to binding contract clauses that suspend gas transport if groundwater or Mataranka spring flow triggers are breached?
What we will commit to is doing everything in our power to comply with whatever conditions are imposed on any development, should it occur at some point in the future. Do we have another question?